All right. We've
Yep,
started
we're live.
recording. We can wait a few minutes, minute or two, see if, now we did get a heads up from the other Sarah. She's coming
here.
down.
Sarah Hoover was here. So.
Oh, that was from you, Sarah?
Yeah, yep, it was. I'm all
How you
right. I'm
feeling?
hanging in there. Okay. I'm probably better than most, but I'm really tired.
Yeah, my arm hurt like crazy the first time, and then the second time I napped twice in a day, which never happens. But that's, you know, small price to pay us. It's fine.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good right now.
All right, well, I think we can start. Jane, you want to do the roll call?
I will. I just want to remind you, when you announce your name, please also state the city and county that you are attending from and that you're attending remotely. Pam Weil.
Here from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Chuck Overby.
Here from East Lansing, Ingham County, and I'm attending remotely.
Alex Smith.
Here attending remotely from Howard City, Michigan, and Montcalm County.
Adam DeLay.
Here attending virtually from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Sarah Hoover.
Here at City of East Lansing, but Clinton County, remote.
Nicole Biber.
I'm here in East Lansing and Ingham County on the internet.
Sarah Ruckout.
Here attending remotely from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Thank you. Pam, you're muted.
Does someone want to move the agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll support.
Any discussion? Okay, I've got a little bit of discussion. I am a little concerned about time constraints because of that massive budget packet that we got. I'm assuming we're just, Tim, going to look at the park section there at the end.
Yeah, the presentation will be the document that you received today. Okay, that's where the time is going to be focused on that particular.
But my concern is that that was 100 pages or something.
No, the one that you received. Okay, there's two attachments. One is the full document, and one is the presentation. So the presentation is a PowerPoint. And
okay.
Yeah, now I can clarify some things with respect to that when that starts, if you'd like.
Yeah, I guess my concern was that looks pretty meaty, and I was concerned a little bit about the time. And so I want to confirm with everybody that we are likely or totally okay with having both the food truck and the historical marker on next month's meeting in addition, if we do not get through them in a timely manner through the budget piece, right? So I don't want a 3-hour meeting. So I guess my question would be kind of to Adam, we've got the letter in the packet to move to make a recommendation to support the marker. And is that critical that happen this meeting? as opposed to next month.
Yeah, because we're looking at applying for it imminently. Now,
Okay.
I've read over most of the packet that was sent. The first 40 pages or so have nothing to do, 40, 50 pages don't have anything to do with the Parks and Recreation
Right.
budget. Most of it is graphs and things. So, we'll see how long it takes us to get through. I'm a little bit more optimistic just because, and then I think that the rest of that is really just extrapolating on what Tim already went over last month. The
Right.
numbers are pretty much the same, but I say we get
Okay.
into it and
Right,
see where we go.
Right. So we will for sure get that letter passed this meeting. But if further discussion looks like it needs to be done on that, or there's more, we can save that until next month's meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then the food truck, do we have anything? We don't really have anything to move forward officially. I think there's quite a bit to talk about in that context. Is there any reason why that is critical to have something completed in this meeting? Is there a time constraint on that for anybody?
Not that I'm aware of, although can I suggest that we just move into the agenda and then when the time comes, if we're running out of time, then we can strategize and decide.
Well, that's why I'm strategizing now, because if we're going to edit and if we're going to move the agenda and support it, I'd like us to know ahead of time what we're doing. So is there something that really needs to come out like the letter for the food truck item? No? Okay, so we can consider that at the beginning of this discussion so people won't have a feeling that there's stuff they have to say. That could be on the agenda next month. So I'm just making that clear. All right. So approve the agenda as is currently stated. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the agenda passes. Approval of last month's meeting minutes. Does someone want to move those?
I'll move it.
Second.
Any discussion about those? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, it passes. And now to public comment. Do we have any public?
Yes, we have one person in the queue. Phone number ending in 534. You may unmute and address the commission.
Hi, this is Ann Hill at 685 Buteo. I'd like to thank Mr. McCaffrey for bringing the proposed Parks and Rec budget information before the commission. I appreciate the efforts that have been made to minimize expenses in response to the extreme revenue decreases we've seen over the past year plus due to the pandemic. The city is clearly not out of the woods as we enter into the fiscal year 2022 in the next few months. Our pension obligations are huge, and the contributions from the income tax are not even making a dent. The sewer, water, and stormwater infrastructure improvements over the past several years were financed by debt, and we currently have long-term debt obligations of $104 million. I respectfully ask that as we move forward over the next few years, that we make every effort to restrict our spending on parks and rec. We have beautiful parks, but at this point in time, I think we need to work to decrease our debt. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right. And now on to the topic of the public comment and the CIP funding.
I'm sorry, my son says he has a public comment. It's
Oh,
just
all
about
right.
Parks and Rec. This is Moses Fiber. It's about Parks and Recreation. What do you want to say? Oh, that's unmuted.
Hi. Okay. So I'm just saying, like, if you want to play on the playground, you could play on the playground, or if you have a field right nearby by your play structure, you could just go in the field. If you have lots of birds and flowers, because we're planning to do a community garden in the park, which is our school park. So sometimes you could play on the playground, but more often, most likely, it's nice to kind of take a look On top of the hill is a good comfy place to go, and then just smell. Use all your truckles. Smell, see, and hear the birds. Smell the flowers, and then you kind of do that and stuff. But if you hear a gorilla cracking a branch, okay,
Then you're not a Michigan. So, yeah, thank you, Moses.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, that was more interesting than the budget. But anyway, so now on to Tim and the budget.
Thank you, Commissioner Weil. The information in the packet with respect to the overall city budget was provided as background information to the commission. I was not intending to be going over all of that this evening. Historically, what we do is we like to perhaps provide a little bit of a context for the commission before we get into specifically the Parks and Recreation sort of portion of the budget. So unless there's questions associated with that extensive executive summary that comes out of the finance department's office and the city manager's office, I was planning to go directly into the Parks and Recreation portion, if that works for everyone. Okay. Oh, hold on just a second here.
Yeah, Pam, you're muted.
Did you put your hand up, Sarah, or you're just supporting going straight to the park section?
Sorry, that was just thumbs up.
Okay, okay, good. All right, looks like you're good to go to straight to parks.
Okay, this document is identified in your agenda as a as a presentation. I think I'm frozen. Can you hear me and see me?
We can hear you, but we can't see. We're only looking at a blank screen. Oh,
There
no.
we go.
There, yeah.
Okay, for whatever reason, I froze, and I don't know why that happened, but. Okay, I'll get started again. Sorry about that. So this document was presented as, or that you're looking at right now, is the presentation that was identified in your agenda packet. The start of the conversation is, first of all, I'd just like to say that obviously, and we've talked about this for the past 2 months, so this is sort of the third month that we're talking about similar topic. But clearly the Parks and Recreation Department has been significantly impacted by the pandemic, both financially and operationally, which can be noted in all the fluctuations of the amounts presented in the budget statements. The summary presented by division, as you look through the document and as we've went through the last 2 months, but clearly illustrates some of the difficulties that we've been facing. When we get to that point, I wasn't planning to go into the level of detail tonight as we did the last 2 months, but if the commission would like to see more detail, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, the pandemic began to impact operations in fiscal year 2020, though no changes were made to the fiscal year 21 budget. And as we, as you know, and we talked about it several times, we couldn't really figure and determine the implications of the pandemic. So we have included, not in the budget tables that you received in the formal budget, but in the presentation this evening, the fiscal year 21 estimates that I'm going to reference multiple times. We also are looking at a gradual return to normal in fiscal year 2022 as we progress through COVID-19 pandemic. However, most of our activity is only going to be forecast at no more than about 85% or 90%, which we still clearly don't know whether we're going to achieve 85 or 90% of normal activity or revenue as we go through the year. And then specific information regarding each of the divisions, parks and recreation programs are provided in this document. So summarizing even further what's in the Parks and Recreation Fund, and the fund I'm talking about, first of all, is obviously the Parks and Recreation Fund, which is a special revenue fund for the city of East Lansing. And we receive contributions from the general fund on an annual basis. So this is a even summarized further document of what already exists in the budget document, the formal budget document. And the next slide you really begin to see the significance of normal operations compared to where we're at today and our forecast for fiscal year 2022. Earned income.
Tim, we're only seeing the first slide.
You're only seeing the first slide?
Yeah.
I wonder if I need to. I don't know why that's happening that way.
Yeah, it looks like your screen sharing is frozen.
Because I see a timer on there.
Justin, can you share your version of it then?
Yes, I can.
I apologize, everyone.
Okay, and you see the first screen here now?
Yeah, go to the second screen.
There you go.
I already referenced, this is a further summary of what you received already. We go to the next one. This is where you start to see things in a really what's occurring. Fiscal year 2019 was our last full year of operations, which I guess the term would be normal operations, which would have been a typical year. Fiscal year 20, we started closing down operations in March. And then obviously this entire year has been different. But if you start looking.
Tim, I got a question though. Why does it look like the amended budget for 2021 looks the same as the 2019? Shouldn't that be a lot smaller?
The amended budget was the approved budget.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
And so the estimate is the actual.
That it's going to be what we anticipate to be actual, since we still have 2 months left in the fiscal year. Thank you. So 2019 actual earned income, which is everything besides for general fund, all the income that we generate, right? So a typical year is 2,408,000, right? Some maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Our earned income for fiscal year end 2021 is going to be, we hope, $658,000. Okay. So when you compare fiscal year 2019 to 2021 year end estimate, that's a $1,749,000 reduction in terms of our earned income. So in order to offset that, because although our expenses are down, they didn't reduce as quickly as our revenue did. You look at our general fund transfer, which was budgeted at for $2,152,000, which again, a slight increase compared to the previous normal year of 2019. Now we're estimating $610,935, which is a $458,000 increase in the transfer from the general fund for fiscal year end 2021. Okay. That combined with personnel services, a savings of personnel services throughout the course of this fiscal year of $373,000, going from 1.99 million, a normal year again, to 1.6 million in year-end estimate. Operating costs, we reduced by some $760,000 this fiscal year is what we're projecting. 2.4 million was a normal year in 2019, And then you go over to the 2021 column, 1,648,000.
Tim, that 300,000 was all seasonal employees, is that correct?
For the most part, it was all seasonal. There, if you recall, we did do some partial layoffs during the year with the full-time staff person. I can't remember the name of the program that the state subsidized. So some of our staff, about 80% of our staff, were on that unemployment approach that was approved for, I can't remember, 2 or 3 months.
Sure.
Out of this fiscal year. So it's a combination, Pam, of a reduction of full-time staff through that they're all back to full-time now, obviously.
And there were no layoffs, is that correct?
We did not lay off any full-time staff persons unless you consider the unemployment was they went to unemployment, right? And then there was seasonal folks that went to unemployment or chose to be laid off also, but they would have been seasonal or contingent employees for a period of time. So $370,000 reduction in personnel, and then operating costs. So like I said, our reduction of about 1.7 million in revenue combined with a reduction of 1.1 million in expenses resulted in the $458,000 shortfall that is being requested to be covered through the city's general fund. We've talked to city council about that. Obviously, the city manager has talked about it. The finance director has talked about it. We've talked about it multiple times with this commission also. So this should not be any kind of a surprise to anyone with respect to that.
I've got a question. So operating costs, could you give me some examples of operating costs? So I know the Hannah Center, heating, cooling, that sort of thing, custodial, minimal, that
Sure.
sort of thing.
So our operating costs are pretty much any kind of cost that is not our personnel. It's not personnel related. It does include repairs and maintenance. It includes utilities. It includes our IT charges that we get charged from the citywide expenses. There's multiple cross-department charges for services that are provided to us that are included in the operating expenses. There's, and candidly, for the most part, a lot of the operating expenses that existed for this fiscal year, a lot of them are, services that are provided from other departments and what have you.
Within the city.
Hopefully that's not a complete list of what our operating expenses are, but that gives you an idea of what.
Right, because my question was, as I looked at that, was if we're not running a program, say in the Hannah Center, what's the cost except for the heating and cooling of buildings, and the staff. So, but yes, I hear what you're saying. It's a general operational citywide infrastructure kind of money.
Right,
So.
and then you got repairs and maintenance, and
Sure.
we took the opportunity to do some additional repairs and maintenance with the building closed that we might not have had the opportunity to do, and so that worked out, especially at the community center, and a lot of expenses just do not go away. The Department of Public Works maintains our grounds for us, and we get charged for that, obviously. So that cost did not go away. And again, without as much use of the facility, they had the opportunity to perhaps do some improvement. If you go by the community center, you'll see a lot of overgrown shrubbery and what have you has been removed by our Department of Public Works over the course of the last 2 or 3 months. So those are the types of expenses that we run into.
Thanks.
And this basically tells the entire story of the Parks and Recreation Fund. What I just shared with you. And because like I said, because of the last 2 months of work that we've done in sharing with the commission, I really wasn't planning to go over all of the rest of this in a high level of detail as far as the operation of the Parks and Recreation Fund is concerned. So at the discretion of the commission, I can continue on with a high level of detail, or we could just sort of move on. I've told you the story. So
I have a quick kind of just to understand, because this probably happened before I came on, but in looking at what the 21 year-end estimate is, so it looks like we had a previous extra transfer from the general fund already, correct? Because I see we go from 2.1 million to 2.6 million. So was there already a 500,000 general fund transfer earlier in the year?
no, that's what we're anticipating will be the year-end estimate based on all of these shortfalls that we talked about.
I see. So that includes so this number includes the 400 that we're talking about potentially coming from the city or from the general fund.
From the general fund, that's correct.
So it's not, so if the math then works out is from a total $1.7 million shortfall, we cut 1.3 and only needed an additional 400 of revenue.
Right. The numbers you just quoted were not exact, but you're tracking completely with what exactly happened. That's correct.
I think that I just want to say, I think Tim, you did a great job given that, if that's 2/3 covered with, expense reductions and only 1/3 to patch the hole. And I think considering that between us and the parking department probably being the two hardest hit sections or departments within the city, the fact that we were able to only take that much extra in order to keep the ship right, I think is speaks a lot to all the finagling you had to do over the last year.
While at the same time following through with making sure that we maintained our full-time staff. So,
Tim, now there's a couple of public meetings on the budget coming up. One at the end of this month and one in May. When will the city council officially pass this? In the May meeting?
So we being myself, perhaps Wendy, will do a presentation about Parks and Recreation budget at the May 11th budget work session, okay? Then there's, I think, 2 or 3 budget work sessions that are continued to be planned, and those will take place, and then the approval of the fiscal year 2022 budget will take place at the May 25th City Council meeting.
Okay, so what I hear with that schedule too, and this is pertaining to us moving on, if the rest of the commissioners agree, is that there's time now for us to personally dig into this packet and bring some stuff forward at this next meeting or at the public meetings that are coming up in the next few weeks. So.
Right, and if commissioners have further questions, staff are more than happy to answer those questions.
Okay, I'm good with basically taking that as your high level and moving forward with the agenda. How do other people have thoughts on that?
I just want to echo Adam's comments that this is a yeoman's work and that Tim and his staff have done a great job of keeping things going, minimizing staff impacts, maximizing the maintaining of services during a very difficult time. So thank you, Tim, and to your staff too.
Thank you. If it's okay, then the next item is, it's still as part of this presentation, we would go to the fee schedule because that's another, go ahead and keep going, Justin. Thank you. So our fee schedule is approved as part of the budget process. I suggest every year to City Council that we have some 650 fees that we charge. Okay, we have a pretty a cumbersome fee schedule, for lack of a better term. for all of our activities. It's important to have resident, non-resident, annual passes, 6-month passes, monthly passes, daily passes, what have you. So what we've provided here is the only items that I've put in this fee schedule comparison are those fees that we made adjustments to for fiscal year 2022 from the previous year. The first one, you see the East Lansing Soccer Complex, and that's for the Lansing United professional or national, whatever they're calling themselves, team. And we've adjusted fees down. The men's Lansing United does not exist anymore, and they're not playing at our complex. That leaves the women's team, and we worked and suggested to Jeremy Sampson that we would be willing to reduce fees for fiscal year 2022. The impacts that the women's league, that the women's team places on the complex and on staff are not near as significant as the impacts that the men's team did. The other few things that we looked at was the East Lansing Community Center daily passes. At one point, we had a pretty significant increase for weekend daily passes strictly for open gym, and we're suggesting that we make that consistent with all of our other weekend non-resident passes as we look at fiscal year 2022. The Hannah Community Center Classroom 211 is a fee that we've had existed for a number of years, but for some reason fell out of the fee schedule inadvertently. The before and after school and summer kids camp, we're suggesting some fee increases.
I've got a question with that one, because weren't we making money on those? Those were in the black, weren't they, with the regular rates?
Historically, for probably maybe the past dozen years or so, yes, we were generating more revenue than income, than expenses. The suggestion behind this is the program will likely not operate in a more revenue than expense in fiscal year 22. If it does, it'll be very close.
Because of the lack of students?
Yeah, lack of attendance, right. The rationale is, number one, our fee schedule for our before and after school program remains at the low end of the market. And the second thing is, we're anticipating that the elementary school schedule may, although we don't know this yet, they may end up ending the school day at like 2:30 in the afternoon as opposed to 3:30 in the afternoon, which would require us to offer an additional hour per day the entire school year of after school care. And obviously you're staffing that across the board for the entire school year. So there's cost associated with that. So staff is recommending a fee increase with respect to the before and after school program. The other, I think there's another page here, is there?
So I got one more comment on that. And this is, when I was on the county parks board, there was much discussion about how much of an increase is it worth changing the fee schedule. So I just wonder, if $1, what kind of revenue would that generate versus the bad will of raising rates? And just to put that out there as something to think about. So you recoup enough, like it's almost better to just make it $5 and, in 3 years from now, as opposed to the tiny increments that end up needing processing and operational changes. And
right.
Anyway, but just a thought.
Right. Another thought with respect to this is we were reluctant. I mean, there was a suggestion made by Commissioner Reckhow at the last meeting that perhaps we give consideration to a tiered fee schedule as we look towards the future. And we wanted to, rather than just change the fee schedule now, I think we want to look at what some other communities are doing around a tiered fee schedule and perhaps give some real close consideration to that and make sure that we look at that thoroughly before we make a recommendation around that.
And there's really looking like there'll be some federal monies to go towards.
Possibility, that's correct. There's a possibility of federal monies. Actually, if you recall, Julianne Jennings submitted a grant application last year for our program, and we ended up with, I think, $80,000 in recovery of lost revenue for the child care program to end the fiscal year 20 budget. And we are right now, Julianne and Kathleen Miller are right now working on a grant request to recover about another $84,000 in this fiscal year. We program that into the revenue stream because you never know if you're going to receive it or not. But there, thank you for bringing that up. That is something that we are looking closely at as we look towards fiscal year 22. Justin, is there another page on this? Thank you. Or sports and athletics, excuse me. All of Us Express Children's Theater. A few suggestions around increasing fees, which candidly I was reluctant to do. Kathleen sort of suggested that let's visit with the 501c3 Children's Theater board that helps with fundraising for us, and they supported her in suggesting a fee increase. So I haven't taken that out on Kathleen. So we're at this point in time suggesting that we leave that in as we go towards fiscal year 2022. Sports and athletics, essentially adult softball. I don't know if Commissioner Weil or Overby will remember this, but for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been talking about with the reduction in adult softball play, moving out of adult softball play and moving towards strictly offering youth play through our youth baseball and softball program and the clubs. And so we really aren't even offering adult, we aren't offering adult softball this year, and we won't next year. We're essentially turning our complex at the north end of the community into a youth complex. So, and it's really being received very well by the East Lansing Baseball Club, East Lansing Softball Club, and what have you. So,
is that just due to lack of interest or in participation, or?
Yes, we saw the trend over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer than that. As many as, let me say it differently. As few as 10 years ago, we had as many as 90 or 95 adult softball teams. As then even 2 or 3 years ago, we were down to 15, 20 adult softball teams. Largely because, and this is a trend that exists nationwide, not just with East Lansing. It's certainly apparent in the greater Lansing area. And it's just a trend that is continuing. So we ended up, you're competing with every local community that's offering this. And our suggestion or our sort of strategy the last 3 or 4 years has been to just move towards getting rid of adult softball and focusing our attention on our youth program and moving them out to the complex at the north end of the community.
And pickleball.
Pickleball's big, yeah. So those are our proposed fee schedule revisions. Then, if it's okay, I'll move on to the capital budget, right? Okay.
Please move on.
Fiscal year 22 Parks Capital Fund. Historically, whether it's fiscal year 22 or any other year, where do the funds come from for us to do capital projects? They come from grants, Natural Resources Trust Fund. Jane sent out an email today at my request, letting you know that our sports court project, pickleball courts, although we knew it was approved in December, was formally approved. by the state legislatures and going to the governor for signature any day now. We get funds through Council of the Arts and Cultural Affairs. And then clearly the Ingham County Trails and Parks Millage funds have been a savior for our trails system the last 3 or 4 years. We also get funds through fundraising campaigns. A perfect example of that is the East Lansing Baseball Club. Each of the last like 2 or 3 years have come up with close to $100,000 over that period as they've facilitated some contributions from the Walmart Foundation that we are using for the improvements to the softball complex that we're doing. Then City Council will approve transfers from other funds, typically the general fund, to help us out with projects. I do want to say that the amount of funds that we get approved from the city general fund is the smallest portion of funds that go towards our capital improvement program. And then the last couple of years, we started using income tax funds, and we'll continue to use income tax funds, the Parks and Recreation portion of the income tax funds. Justin, if you could go to the next. So basically the projects that we have in the fiscal year 22 budget that are capital projects include the Aquatic Center improvement project. The 2010 budget is $210,000. We put in here total project cost because it's more than likely when we're doing a capital project that it's going to span over 2 or 3 fiscal years. Oftentimes the minimum it's going to span is 2 fiscal years, and more than likely it's going to be 3 fiscal years. We do have a trails project that I think is going on 4 fiscal years right now. So the Aquatic Center improvements are desperately needed improvements. We're going to close the park this fiscal year or this season. We've talked about that in the past, so that we can take care of some desperately needed concrete repairs, some dewatering around the perimeter of the pool shell, and replace the liner. So in the fund source that we're planning for that is the income tax at $410,000. The Patriarchs Park Pavilion and restroom renovation is predominantly funded in fiscal year 2021, the current fiscal year, and we expect carryover as that project ends up completing in the beginning of fiscal year 2022, and as we finally end up paying all of our bills to our general contractor on that project. And there again, the fund sources there are the income tax, as well as and the income tax being the Parks and Recreation portion and the Department of Natural Resources grant, which we received. Just talked a minute ago about the Patriarchs Park hard surface sports courts, which is the $300,000 pickleball court grant that we received. And there again, a portion of income tax and a portion that is dedicated to Parks and Recreation, as well as the DNR. All of these 3 projects, like I said, are desperately needed, candidly, for safety purposes. And the pavilion, had we not received the grant, we probably would have had to have closed it permanently had we not received the grant. And the sports court surfaces would probably need to be removed. So these are very important projects for us.
Jim, now we've talked about hoping to find money for the basketball court area behind the pickleball court updates.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of rolled into the hard surface sports courts?
Yes, that's what we rolled. We rolled that into the hard surface sports courts. Thank you for asking that question. That's an important piece here. We believe that the basketball courts, well, first of all, if you go and look at those basketball courts that exist at Patriarchs Park at this point in time, they're an embarrassment for the community. Secondly, the drop-in basketball play, as evidenced by what we see in the parking lot immediately north of the community center is a very popular opportunity for young folks to participate in recreation, anywhere from elementary age to college age and even early adulthood. And you have to remember, at my age, I probably include maybe 35 and 40-year-old guys as being early adulthood, okay? The Lake Lansing Road intersection, Trails and Parks Millage project, the pedestrian bridges at Tamarisk neighborhood and Bessemer neighborhood are identified in this budget, and Northern Tier Trail improvements to realign the trail at as it goes through Abbott Park. Once again, 100%. I mean, if you look at all of these projects, we're not requesting any use of the city's general fund to complete these projects. We're looking at dedicated parks and trails millage. We're looking at the Parks and Recreation portion of the income tax and Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund grants. So that's the proposed Parks Capital Improvement Fund.
I have a question just to help me maybe understand. So like on the Lake Lansing Road intersection, that's like sort of getting rid of that, I think it's called a slip lane, and doing all the changes around there. And I know you're saying that like the reason why you see 134,000, but overall 400,000 is because the cost goes over several years. Just trying to understand, like, does the actual construction part of the project take that long, or is it just how much you have to pay, or for how long you're paying after the work is done? Like, you know, you pay for it and then you're paying it off, or just like, how does that logistically, does that make sense what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, good question. Very good question. What you end up having is when you start a project, you have multiple months before it actually comes to fruition. And then you have costs for architectural and engineering costs that you incur. And then after you incur some architectural and engineering costs, you may end up incurring some surveying costs or other costs associated with getting the project started and moving forward. And then just the timing of the project may be that you start a project in May or June and it bleeds into the following fiscal year. So no, typically a project won't take 3 or 4 years. Although I did mention that trails, some of the trails work that we've had done recently, and it was actually, in our mind, it was one large project that got broken down by the county into multiple smaller projects, and the way they awarded the funds became multiple sections of the project got done, and then, but it still was counted as one project.
Got it.
If you want more clear information on that, Wendy could probably provide more.
No, I think that sort of gets at it, especially the fact that you're probably doing most of these in the summer months anyway, and that's when the fiscal year switches over, and then, you know, it gets kind of wonky.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Also, Adam, many of these are, since they're funded with grant funds, especially the Department of Natural Resources, you spend the money first and then they reimburse you. And then Ingham County also, they give you some money up front, but then it's a reimbursement. So when the revenue comes in can, you know, really span a pretty extensive length of time. So.
Thank you both.
I have a bit of a question when you're talking about engineering and just looking at like the hard surface and trail improvements. Is there, as part of the planning, looking at stormwater runoff and like the permeability of these new surfaces? Because if there's new surfaces and new things going in, I mean, you know, like recently, like the most poisonous asphalts, you know, city council passed that where those are banned now. But I mean, impermeable surfaces wreak a lot of havoc with flooding and with runoff of things into our water. So I don't know if that's part of it. And if not, could it be, or maybe just even as an opportunity for mitigation through something like more rain gardens, saying like, oh, we couldn't afford permeable surfaces, but here's like something to account for those problems. And also just dreaming federally, if we can ever get the Senate functional, if part of infrastructure is indeed a focus on environmental sanity, I guess for a word that just frankly pulls out of my mind, that sort of issue and the damage to our water, maybe that would eventually be something that could help mitigate that stormwater runoff if it's not already part of the engineering plans.
Sure. We've got several projects where we've incorporated the runoff and tried to get more permeable surfaces. And I use the playground project as the example with the rain garden that we have in the Patriarch Park. And there's been some consideration around that topic as we are looking towards the architectural and engineering for the hardcore surfaces projects also. Thank you.
That is part of the thought process in the planning, Nicole, in terms of how we address stormwater runoff and how we minimize it and mitigate some of our other impacts to the landscape. We do include.
Lovely to hear. No, thank you.
So with that, historically, we asked the commission to do a recommendation to City Council with respect to the Parks and Recreation Fund as proposed, and the fee schedule, and the Parks Capital Improvement Fund as proposed by staff and as reviewed by the commission. And I think Jane has put a suggested motion into the agenda packet if the commission would like to go ahead and support the staff recommendation.
Where is that? Do you know what page it is?
Jane?
Actually, part of the agenda report, Justin. I don't know if you have that up. If you can open. Right there under, oops, yep, down where it says recommendation.
So the motion reads, motion by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission to recommend City Council approval of the fiscal year 2022 Parks and Recreation Fund budget, Parks CIP, and the 22 proposed fee schedule as prepared by staff and as reviewed by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission.
Does someone want to move that?
I move that we support this this motion as stated.
Is there a second?
A second.
My only concern is that the fee structure is not correct around the ceramics program, that it's $5 instead of $20, which is the current charge for materials. But I just going to put that out there as an FYI. So I won't vote against this because of that, but.
We can fix that.
Okay. So that it kind of concerns me that maybe, yeah, so. All right.
So you could add that as a friendly, or else staff will just promise to fix it.
Yeah, if that comment goes in the minutes and we don't need to amend that solely,
Sure.
That tiny
Thank you.
micro
Thank
change.
you for catching that.
Yeah. All right, all those in favor of the motion as read and written in the packet, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, does that wrap up the budget discussion
That's
portion?
everything on budget.
Does anybody have any more budget comments? I do want to say we're just talking about the parks. I know your department, Tim, deals with other building maintenance and that sort of thing. And that it's clear that we're just talking about what we see in this in terms of park improvements and that sort of thing. So.
Right.
All right, food truck. Sarah, you want to do some talking, intro it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hi. So I guess as by way of background, this little document that was shared in the agenda, myself and Sarah Hoover put some ideas together into that, and it was in large part some brainstorming. And I think just to back up a moment here as to sort of the why discuss this now. I would put a few things on the table as why now is kind of a good timing to explore these ideas. One of which is the pandemic, which is impacting sort of activities and what folks feel comfortable doing. A lot of folks don't necessarily want to go eat in an indoor restaurant right now, for example. What families are sort of looking to do in their time and in these strange times going into the summer. And yet we have our parks and we have a lot of, really wonderful recreational space in the community. And I think this is one way to, expand some of what we're able to offer. Added to that is the fact that the Aquatic Center isn't going to be open this summer, and that's a space that a lot of families look towards for summer recreation. And so I think it would be nice to offer some type of expansion of the sort of community type of gathering and recreational opportunity in the park spaces that are available in the community. And then a third item is just sort of what's been going on downtown and some of the sort of festival reshuffling and the fact that we still have a lot of ongoing development in our downtown. And so again, sort of thinking about spaces like Patriarch that are outside of the downtown, but also a really welcoming community gathering space that we have as an asset. And I guess, added to that is the fact that these improvements are underway, but should hopefully be completed early in the summer with some time to still really enjoy those amenities during the summer months and try to welcome the community and showcase, I guess, the fact that those have been completed. So that's just a few of the things. And so what we did was look at, on the one hand, sort of just as a general logistical thing, the idea of a process for food truck permitting specific to parks, though I know, there's also the city is involved with food trucks, and we do have food trucks, of course, at the farmers market. The events idea is probably what we spent the most time on, kind of, again, building off of this notion that without the Aquatic Center open and with some, changes in our festival schedule, can we, create some community-oriented activity and space in Patriarch and maybe look at what other communities have done, specifically some of them in their parks that bring food in, but also events and activities in safe outdoor spaces, things that you can do even while we're still dealing with COVID. And then we just added some questions at the end and some of the local food trucks. I don't know, Sarah, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I think you did a great job covering it, but Ron knows because he lives in my neighborhood as well. We've had multiple food trucks in our subdivision over the course of the last, well, we had the Kona hot cocoa truck even in the dead of winter, but we've had 3 in the last month, and then we have another one scheduled to come next Friday. There's just a woman in our community that schedules those trucks, and when they show up, they have a line and people are spaced out, and people are with their children and their dogs, and the older people that walk down there just for the exercise. And it's building kind of a unique sense of community in a time that's very unique as well, and it's been pretty well received in my neighborhood. So I can only imagine how well received it would be in a park. And one of the examples we had on there is Corona. I'm from Owasso originally, and McCurdy Park had their event, regularly. And Sarah and I aren't necessarily recommending we jump off into the deep end and have this every week, but it's something to consider that they're very successful with it. And it's a pretty simple program. They don't allow alcohol because that's always a question that we get. Sometimes they just have, a local musician with a guitar, and people just kind of hang out and space out and eat their food and just relax and just enjoy being outside. So we think it's a great opportunity to kind of put a bit of a positive light on this commission, given, as Sarah mentioned, my family too, we look forward to using the Aquatic Center. My son's had multiple birthday parties there. His birthday's in August, and he's super disappointed that we won't be able to have his party there this year because it felt like a safe alternative with everyone outside. So I know it's something I'm excited about. And when Sarah suggested at the last meeting, I emailed her right afterwards and said, I'm your girl, let me help, because this is, something that I know a little bit about. And I think it's something that could be really positive for our community.
All right. Ron?
Yeah, it's a pretty easy sell, particularly to as council's configured right now as well, as far as supporting this. You got some food truck and outdoor lovers on council right now, and that fully support this and looking for more ideas like this to get creative and kind of, particularly as we're coming out of the pandemic, anything that accelerates foot traffic and, kind of participation and that kind of thing. We're looking for kind of all through in all different degrees of the pandemic. If you guys are creative and thinking of things like that, we're open to, everything. I think we got to throw everything at it to try to get particularly our bars and restaurants and shops and things having foot traffic. So whatever you guys are thinking, it's probably yes. So we're open to it. So.
Well, though food trucks at Patriarch might be pulling away from downtown a bit.
Gets people out and about.
Right. I'm just saying it doesn't really fit with the foot traffic downtown, but
we can put them downtown another time as well. We're down for it's all good.
Yeah. They're mobile. That's the beauty of them.
Yeah.
Right?
I something about Valley Court popped out in my mind because, you've already got the farmers market space there that has a stage that has built in. I could see you swapping out the pop-up tents that we see there in the summer to also occasionally have it to where you've got food trucks there. Like the infrastructure's there. So you could do it sometimes at Patriarch, and I'm thinking long-term beyond COVID. I think that food trucks are very popular. I love them. I think that it's something that you could create a whole program off of and, generate revenue at the same time. The only thing that I'm thinking of, and I'll put on my DHHS employee hat, is to say that we do have to make sure that we're following department gathering limitation restrictions, which for outdoor events, I believe is, if it's non-resident, it's 300 or fewer persons. I believe if it is outdoor, that could obviously change by the time we do this. And I'm shooting from the hip here, so because I don't know the exact exemptions to that, but that's just something to be cognizant of, or what the gathering limitations are by the state currently. But that's obviously something we can navigate. That's just sort of a footnote that I have.
Perhaps Tim would know. Is there any resistance or thing that we're not picturing? I'm sure this isn't a new wheel or anything.
Or what's the staff work associated with this sort of thing?
So if I could, I did have a conversation with Sarah Recco on this topic. I can't remember, last week sometime and there are some things, some thoughts that I did have, and I made a mistake last time I put something up, but maybe I won't this time when I try to share the screen. And Justin does not have this, so he can't help.
Justin just ran away, whatever you're asking. He disappeared.
I'm still here, but.
And for whatever reason, I don't know why this is not working. I've been pretty good at it before. But anyway, okay, maybe I don't have to reference that document. other than I can look at it.
And we could speak to it and then share it after if it's something
Right,
that can be
absolutely.
articulated.
Okay, first couple, there's like a few things that I thought I would discuss. The enabling legislation around things such as food trucks, like our parks ordinance in sections 28-37 through 28-40 allow parks or allow concessionaires types of things with permits as approved by the city manager. Also, section 8 of the ordinance does also talk about under Article 3, peddlers, solicitors, transient merchants, concessionaires. So there is opportunities that are available under section 8, 131 through 134 that allow us to do that. One of the things that we have become aware of in years past is the fact that we've got in the downtown, there's the brick and mortar restaurants have in the past not been real thrilled about groups that come in and just set up. If there's a new view on that topic, then great. With respect to outdoor dining in the downtown, the planning department and the downtown management board are working on what they're calling is the daytime, nighttime, anytime place project. And that's going to include a number of little picnic tables and such at various strategic locations throughout the downtown. And actually just yesterday, I found out also that that area where we set up the outdoor dining in the downtown on Albert last year, what they're talking about doing now is, this of course hasn't been approved yet, but they're talking about taking the south lane, which would be the eastbound lane, and closing the eastbound lane for about 8 or 10 weeks in that area where the tables were set up last year, using that lane as kind of like a pedestrian area, and then having the restaurants have the opportunity that are in that area to do a lot more with dining out on the sidewalks. And so there's some examples of where we are starting to move towards some outdoor dining. Vendor permits requests are also coming in. We just received last week a vendor permit to sell ice cream. And it was a little bit interesting because it's sort of a blanket request to sell ice cream in city parks, okay? So what we're doing is we're forming a staff group to look at that particular situation and look at how do we approve the vendor to be in the ice cream area and involve all the departments that could be affected, which could include, it includes Parks and Recreation, could include the planning department, certainly includes Department of Public Works through the maintenance department, as well as police department, because they would be involved with enforcement with respect to that. The suggestion was made that we have had food trucks at the farmers market, and historically we do that weekly. In 2019, we had 1 week where we had a food truck at the farmers market, and we're looking at, making sure that we can accommodate any of the MDHHS, governor, and or local health officials before we make any decisions about food trucks at the farmers market. We have historically had Lansing United has done some out at the soccer complex for their program also. So these staff teams are sort of in place right now. The suggestion that I did make to Commissioner Reckow was that perhaps one of the things we might want to do is we might want to look at Patriarch's Park real closely, because that's a very good place to perhaps do that. The sort of challenge that we would have this year is that the pavilion and the restrooms are under reconstruction, and that won't be completed till the end of June or the first part of July. We are planning some activities when the pavilion opens, events that we could perhaps piggyback events off of those areas. So hopefully this begins to respond to some of the thoughts that Commissioner Reckow and Commissioner Hoover had. Wendy?
I just wanted to mention as well, and Tim and I have not had an opportunity to discuss this within the context of what he just shared with you, but we received an email earlier this week from the library, and they have a van they're calling Library to Go. And they have plans over the course of the summer. They would like to bring that van into an assortment of parks within the city. And so we'll be talking with Justin and some of these other work groups that Tim has indicated. But I think there's some real opportunity to sort of pull these things together so that we're not duplicating resources and that we're capitalizing on each other's strengths and what we have to offer. So I think that's really a pretty exciting thing to see the library making those outroads and partnering with us to do some things in the parks. So
yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing too is lessons learned from this crazy pandemic and bringing some positive things forward, and yay, you know.
So we could come back in future meetings and keep the commission updated on things that we started working on. The neighborhood concept I think is really cool too, especially since I think there's perhaps block parties and things of that nature that we can take advantage of. And if I'm understanding this correctly, that's kind of what's been happening in the Hawknest neighborhood.
Yeah, so we originally lived in Hawknest in the first phase, which is the over kind of on runs under the neighborhood. And they used to have a block party. And then once they started building phase 2, they had a separate block party, which is sort of self-defeating. But now there's 5 phases, so there's no more block parties. But I think this is sort of their way of bringing that back, just a way for the community to gather. And the only thing that I see as a limitation in our neighborhood, I mean, we have Hawknest Park, which would be great, except there's not a ton of parking for it. So you pretty much have to walk there. So there are some barriers if people aren't able to walk over. And then of course, parking is an issue. Even when it's out in front of someone's home, they have to park, on the street, and they're kind of lined up down the road, but people were willing to wait. So if anyone's ever had the food truck that's at Horrocks quite often, 517 Picnic, there was the longest line for him, at least as far as what we could see. And his name is on the list, and he's pretty busy though. Edo Chef and that truck are really pretty packed already this summer. So when I reached out to them just to say, hey, if we do something, would you be interested in participating? And a couple of them already said, no, my schedule's already full this summer, which good for them, bad for us, but good for them.
All right.
Yeah, sorry, just
Go.
I do think to Sarah to the Sarah Hoover's point, that is one thing to keep in mind, is that if there were a particular target starting date in mind, especially associated with and I guess it's a little touch and go with ensuring that the park improvements were done. So I can, but that there is something to be said for that. You do kind of have for food trucks, scheduling them and inviting them. They plan, and a lot of the breweries have them, so they do plan out their schedules, and it's just a consideration to have in mind that they're planning in advance.
So we can continue to do work on this topic and provide another opportunity for conversation at the next meeting also.
All right. All right, Dr. Green. Adam, you want to talk about that?
You know what, Tim, do you want to maybe just kind of start and talk about what it is that the letter is asking for? Because I know you had kind of came to me and said you wanted to kind of change how we were going to do this procedurally.
Yeah, what we had, the commission said, yeah, let's go ahead and support the application, right? At the last meeting, which is, I think, what we're still suggesting that happens here. However, as we worked our way through the conversation, Adam and it occurred to me that if there's going to be an application that's being put into the Michigan History Center for a historical marker that's going to be in a city park, and it's going to be a permanent installation in the city park, that the installation will require city council approval, and even the application would require city council approval. So Adam suggested that the MLK Commission is doing the application. So this letter simply suggests that the commission supports the application by the MLK Commission and suggests to city council that the commission supports it, and it's a great, it's a good project to go ahead and move forward and request the support of city council for the submittal of the application. So
but it's not gonna, I would love to see that little space become a park, but it's currently not a park, right? So it's on park land. Are we kind of leaning towards a little more development, a bench or something? Is that?
So in the conversations that I've had, unfortunately, it's a huge park green space with only 2 houses on it. It just so happens that one of those 2 houses is almost right across the street from where we want to put this. So where we'd be looking at putting this does butt up to an adjacent property. And when I spoke with the owner, he had, they had no real concerns about doing a marker, but they did express some hesitancy about doing anything at a somewhat larger scale that close to the property. Now, that being said, when I had spoken with Tim about it initially, it's sort of, I think the idea, number one is to maintain that space as a green space, naturally, but you could do more, so sort of the middle ground, like somewhere between like just putting up the marker and leaving it versus like putting up the marker, maybe putting in some benches. I like the idea of a free little library, but that's just me, where you could put in Dr. Green's book, for example, or just stuff like that. So just like a small footprint. So somewhere between sort of a larger development where, okay, you're doing more than just the marker, but you're also sort of maintaining what I think is the purpose of that area, which is to be a natural green space.
Right, and I just reading over the document, it does not, nowhere in here does it say it's in a park. So I'm good with that.
Okay, yeah, and so to give you a sense of where I'm at, this is the finished project in terms of how long the application took to put. Yeah, it weighs in at about 60 pages, so I'm very excited that it's done. So once we have that letter, I'm going to include that with the application when I send it. So with the approval of that tonight, I'm on course finally to get the application submitted sometime, if not by the end of this week, early next week.
Okay, and I can electronically sign it and send it to Tim, and he can send it to you, and it'll be good to go.
Put it right in the packet and walk it over to the post office, and then
we'll
go from there.
This recommendation will go to the mayor and the city council, and then the city council will want city council to support the submittal of the application since it's going to be on park property.
Do we know when the next opportunity they would have to do that?
Their next meeting will be, is there a meeting next? There's a meeting next Tuesday, but I think the agenda is already set unless a council member decided to talk to the city manager about changing the agenda. And
does it need to, I'll see, do you need this on the agenda for that'd be the 27th? Is that what you're saying, Adam?
I don't know. Well, I'll put it this way. I got an application right there. I am ignorant as to what the proper procedure should be on the city's end. So if we want to wait, I can submit the thing next Wednesday morning instead, but it is pretty much ready to go right now. But if we feel it's best to wait to have council, kind of give it the razzle dazzle, I can wait for that too.
And another option
Adam,
conceivably
sorry.
be that the application gets submitted, but then we get city council approval to support the application post submittal of the application. But if it's going to be on city property, I think it's going to be important to get city council concurrence. If we don't do that on the 27th, it could conceivably happen on May 11th. Would be the
No,
next.
sooner is better than later. So, okay. So you're saying for submission?
The other thing I would say is that when I send this in, it's going to be a while before the state gives a thumbs up on it. So
Yeah.
it's not something that's imminent in the sense that like I'll submit this tomorrow and then we're in a rush to get the council to do it.
Well, no, it's already such a slow process. I don't want to.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, we could plan on the 27th. I'm sure this project's already been vetted. It's already been vetted by council, and we'll get it on the 27th agenda, and then you'll be able to just submit on the 28th, and that should be just fine.
I think that would be perfect, which is a couple of weeks later than I had intended it to take. But as I started doing it, it got more and more involved. And when you involve a guy,
I saw the packet. I'm glad it was you.
Well, as I always say, is that when you get somebody with a last name Delay involved, just you get what you pay for.
Wah, wah, wah.
But yeah, so that's pretty much, that sounds perfect to me. We can get the letter and then that can go to council and then we can shoot for an application date of, I can get it mailed next Wednesday.
If I may, Pam, I will send you the letter to be signed if you can send it back to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got the copy, but it does have a page number from the packet, so that would be good.
Yeah, I will get you a letter to sign.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Adam, I want to thank you for this. This effort is timely, relevant, and you've worked really hard on it. And thank you for your efforts, Adam.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun to learn the history, and working with Councilmember Bacon and Ron and the other folks have just been immensely supportive and have made it very easy to get with the city on this. So definitely a well-rounded effort, and you know, glad to be excited to sort of take the next step in making this a reality.
ELI has a nice story on it, FYI. So.
I should also say
More
there's
PR.
Yeah, the Fox 47 came by today, and I believe they're doing a story on it. Maybe at 10 o'clock if they haven't already.
Oh, cool. All right. Any other comments on 3.3 item, Dr. Green? All right. Director's report.
I had a brief document that I just put into the director's report, just kind of outlining sort of the activities that have occurred with various commissioners as follow-up items. The conversation with Commissioner Reckow, conversations with Commissioner DeLay. Staff met with Commissioner Biber with respect to the conversation around a garden, and it looks like that project's going to be a community vegetable garden on school district property, but we're talking more about a project around a pollinator meadow or something of that nature. So we're continuing to move around that. So I just provided that. Commissioner Bacon also discussed at the last meeting something around rebranding and marketing. So we have follow-up to do around that still, but we wanted to make sure we kept that on the docket in this and let the commission know we're following up on that. Commissioner Reckow talked about tiered fees, so we'll continue to do work around that and see if can be some considerations. And then the public property naming project, I kind of fell down a little bit on that, but that is now on the May 11th City Council agenda, regular meeting.
Tim, a question on the property naming guidelines. Your notes said that staff were following up with a city attorney, and I was just wondering how that fit into the process, and what was the city attorney's role?
Right. Whenever there's a policy resolution, which this is, we request the city attorney to do a review. It's a typical kind of perfunctory kind of.
Right, Pro forma, yes.
Pro forma, thank you. So that's my report today.
May I add a comment? The item 3.3 required a recommendation motion. The support for the
A letter.
Oh, yeah, we've got the letter. Oh, and should we, does someone want to move that as a formal letter? I think we did that last week, but we can do it again.
I can move that.
Second.
All those in support, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, unanimously carries. All right.
And then I'll get with George on the agenda, Tim. And then what's my ask formally for that, to move this item forward?
I think what we would hope for is this would be on the consent agenda as City Council supporting the submittal of the application to the Michigan History Center for a historical marker on city property.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. Commissioner communication. Chuck, do you have something? Adam, do you have something?
Nope.
Oh. Sarah Hoover?
I think I've talked enough this meeting.
Oh, no, more talking. Everybody should be talking. Sarah Rackow?
No.
Nicole?
Always. No, just thank you to Tim and Wendy and Julie Lehman had, joined us from the garden project, and just it was wonderful. I didn't have to sell anything. It was all just like, here's how we can help. So with the water sourcing, and I think it and also help with who we contract with, like agreements for paying bills and whatnot. But yeah, it's really nice to just sort of have so much support and assistance on sort of all the many steps to get something like this going. Because in my yard, I just throw a bunch of seeds around and it's there. So this is really nice. To get to have
community work.
Community work.
I'm thrilled with both the garden and the food truck idea.
It's exciting.
Welcome new members, and Adam, everybody's going nuts.
It's very nice. So, and just as a shameless thing of note, because I'm the author, but in City Pulse today, they published a little opinion piece I did for Earth Day. So happy Earth Day, everyone.
Yes, happy Earth Day.
Yeah.
All right, and I guess my only 2 cents, boring operational observations. I hope that we can get an operational and maintenance plan for the Patriarch bathrooms that have them opening at the same time as recreation events start being held, particularly T-ball. Sorry, my son's old now, but back in the day, not having those bathrooms open and T-ball going was a bad combo. Just saying. So yeah, and so I know that's not us, but let's.
Yeah, unfortunately, this year they'll be under reconstruction.
No, I know. I'm just saying, I'd love to see agreements articulated between us and DPW. So when this has been brought up in the past, it's not, the parks don't decide when they open, but it would be good to be able to say they will be opening this day. And now with the DPW director going on hiatus, you think it might be even better to have these things documented.
Well, Nicole McPherson will be the acting Department of Public Works director, while Scott House is on he's a
National Guard
in the National Guard, and he's going to be on assignment in Washington, D.C. for, I think, close to a year.
But yeah, so having the 2 pieces work together would be good.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
All right. Does anyone have anything else? Do I hear a move to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear support to adjourn?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. We're adjourned. All right. Have a good month, people, and see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Ron?
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
Ron?
Yes.
work with Jane and get some things for you tomorrow. If you,